Revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's fatigue, the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones, not from work, not from effort, but from people. You wake up and your chest already feels heavy, not because something went wrong, but because someone took something from you and you didn't even notice when. They don't rob you with rage, they rob you with need. They come softly with stories, apologies, helplessness. And every time you listen, every time you comfort, every time you give, a piece of your energy slips away. They smile. You fade. They recover. You decay. And the worst part, you still call it kindness. Here's the cruel truth. What drains you doesn't always look toxic. Sometimes it looks familiar. Sometimes it looks like love. You've been taught that being available makes you good, that selflessness equals virtue. But what they don't tell you is selflessness is the easiest target for control. Because when you make your emotions available, you make your energy negotiable. And in a world built on silent transactions, your energy becomes their currency. Most people don't take your time, they take your attention. They survive by feeding on what you feel. The anxious partner who needs constant reassurance. The friend who always has a crisis. The co-worker who always just needs to vent. They hand you their chaos, and you carry it like a duty. But duty without boundaries becomes enslavement. You call it empathy. They call it supply. Here's something most people never realize. The human mind is wired to balance emotional energy like a battery. When someone projects pain onto you, they discharge it and you absorb it. It's how guilt, shame, and anxiety travel like invisible contagions between people. You think you're helping them heal, but in truth, you're helping them transfer. They leave lighter, you leave hollow. That's emotional drain syndrome, not a diagnosis, but a reality. The silent bleeding of your emotional system disguised as connection. There's a reason the most manipulative people seem to live in constant drama. Drama creates energy, tension, reaction, attention, and energy is the only real currency in the psychological marketplace. They've learned the subtle art of emotional parasitism. Create instability, provoke empathy, extract validation. Repeat, they don't need your money, they need your response. Because your reaction gives them meaning. That's why ignoring them hurts more than confrontation. Silence starves their addiction. Here's what they'll never admit. They don't want peace, peace doesn't feed them. They want your turmoil, your care, your apology, your need to make things right. They will keep breaking the glass just to watch you bleed, trying to fix it. Because fixing becomes your addiction too. You start equating exhaustion with loyalty, and you confuse pain with purpose. That's how they win. Not through dominance, but through depletion. And then one day, you wake up and feel nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just the slow numbness that comes when you've given everything you had to people who never intended to refill you. That's when you realize they never wanted your love. They wanted your availability. Because availability is access, and access is power. Most people never see it until they're already drained dry. By then, your empathy has become their ecosystem. But here's the paradox. You taught them how to take from you by never teaching them how to stop. Every, it's okay. Every, don't worry about me. Every, I'll handle it. Built their comfort and destroyed your boundaries. The more you carried, the more they expected. And the more they expected, the less you became. Until you were no longer a person in their eyes, just an endless resource. This is the part no one likes to hear. You can't save people who enjoy draining you, because for them, it's not suffering, it's sustenance. You can love them deeply, but love without limits becomes a ritual of self-erasure. You think you're healing them, you're just feeding their emptiness. They will never stop until you do. And when you finally do, they will call you cold. They will call you selfish. They will call you changed. Good, because you are. That's the first step in reclaiming your energy, learning that being misunderstood is safer than being emptied. Because sometimes protection looks like detachment. Sometimes strength looks like silence. And sometimes healing means becoming the villain in someone else's story. The economy of emotion. Power doesn't always come from strength. Sometimes it comes from hunger. People hunger for emotion, for validation, for acknowledgement, for attention. They crave it more than food, more than logic, more than peace. And when they find someone who gives it freely, they never let go. You became their favorite supplier. Here's the quiet mechanism behind emotional drain syndrome. Every human relationship is an exchange of invisible energy. When you care, listen, or empathize, you give away fragments of psychological fuel. When they vent, demand, or manipulate, they absorb it, even if they don't realize it. Some exchanges are balanced. You share, they share. The current flows both ways. But when that balance collapses, when one side only takes, your nervous system begins to starve. It's not poetic, it's biological. The vagus nerve, the very line connecting your brain and heart, begins to associate their presence with depletion. That's why you feel tired around them before they even speak. Your body remembers what your mind tries to deny. Here's the cruel beauty of the drain. It's gradual. They don't arrive with demands. They arrive with stories. They confess, cry, and crumble, and you, being kind, respond. You offer warmth. You offer guidance. You offer yourself. And slowly, imperceptibly, your energy becomes their oxygen. It's not manipulation in the beginning, it's dependence. But dependency always grows roots into control. They learn that when they hurt, you rush in. When they fail, you fix. When they falter, you fold. Soon, your empathy becomes their permission slip to never evolve. Here's what they don't tell you about empathy. It can become a leash not for them, but for you. Because every time you absorb someone else's emotions, you lose the ability to interpret your own. You begin to mistake their chaos for your duty, their pain for your identity. You begin to speak their language of exhaustion, fluent in guilt, fluent in obligation. That's when you start to notice. You can't rest even in silence. You replay their problems in your head like unfinished work. You check on them when they go quiet, not because you care, but because you're afraid of what their silence might cost you emotionally. That's not connection. That's captivity. Let's go deeper. The drain thrives on asymmetry. One side gives emotional labor, reassurance, validation, emotional containment. The other side gives drama stories, crises, excuses. And together they form an unspoken pact. One bleeds so the other can breathe. The manipulator doesn't always know they're doing it. They just feel better when you're near, because your calm regulates their chaos. Your attention stabilizes their identity. In psychology, this is called emotional regulation, outsourcing the process of using someone else's nervous system to manage your own. But on a darker level, it's energetic vampirism disguised as intimacy. They don't say, "I need to feed." They say, "I just need to talk." They don't say, "I need to drain you." They say, "I can only trust you." And each time you comply, they grow stronger in dependency and you weaker in spirit. Here's where it becomes dangerous. Draining isn't just emotional, it becomes existential. You start editing yourself to maintain their comfort. You stop sharing your truth because their reactions feel too heavy. You avoid your own goals because they might trigger their insecurity. And slowly, your life rearranges itself around their emotional climate. That's how control hides inside compassion. Not by force, by fatigue. They don't need to chain you. They just need to tire you. Because a drained mind doesn't rebel. It rationalizes. It explains. It endures. But there's something even darker. You might enjoy being needed. There's an ancient part of your psychology, the savior archetype, that finds meaning in being essential to someone's survival. It feels noble. It feels selfless. But underneath, it's addiction disguised as altruism. You crave their chaos because it makes you relevant. You confuse intensity with intimacy, and you keep returning to the fire that's burning you because the silence feels worse. The truth? You're not addicted to them, you're addicted to the role they allow you to play. The caretaker, the stabilizer, the one who understands. But every savior becomes a slave when gratitude fades, and gratitude always fades. Here's the paradox of emotional drain. It only ends when you realize that giving more doesn't restore connection, it destroys it. The more you give, the less they respect it. The more you explain, the less they listen. The more you forgive, the less they fear losing you. Because when abundance meets entitlement, depletion is inevitable. You think love will heal them. They think your love is endless. Both are illusions. You cannot pour into someone who has mistaken your kindness for infrastructure, because no matter how much you give, it will never be enough. Their emptiness isn't a cup, it's a hole, and you were never meant to fill it. When you understand this, the world changes shape. You stop feeling guilty for being distant. You stop apologizing for needing silence. You stop chasing validation from those who mistake your empathy for obligation. That's not cruelty, that's calibration, because sometimes peace is not found in connection, it's found in disconnection. The anatomy of extraction. Every manipulation begins as a story. Not theirs, yours. The story that says, I'm the strong one. I can handle it. I'll be fine. That story is your weakness, wrapped in pride. Because the moment you believe you can absorb anything, someone will test that belief. They don't appear as predators, they appear as broken people. You feel their sadness before they even speak. You see the weight in their eyes and think, if I can help them, maybe I'll feel worthy. That's the first extraction. The emotional exchange where your worth depends on their healing. But here's the truth that burns. You were never meant to heal everyone. That impulse is not compassion, it's control disguised as virtue. Because helping people feels like power. It feeds your ego under the mask of kindness. And manipulators sense that like wolves smell fear. They don't just drain your energy. They drain your need to be needed. You start to feel it in conversations. They call you when the world falls apart, never when it's calm. You comfort, you soothe, you advise. But when you struggle, they vanish into static silence. It's not an oversight, it's a system. They've learned that your compassion has no price tag, so they spend it freely. That's how emotional drain works, not as theft, but as assumed entitlement. They stop seeing you as a person with limits. You become a utility, like a lamp switched on whenever they need light, ignored when they don't. Here's what's happening underneath. When someone unloads on you emotionally, your mirror neurons, the brain's empathy network, activate. They sync with their emotional state. That's why you feel their stress in your chest, their anxiety in your stomach. Your body mirrors their suffering. But what happens when this mirroring never stops? Your nervous system starts mistaking their distress as your default. Your cortisol spikes, your sleep collapses, your focus splinters into emotional fragments. You're no longer living your life, you're processing theirs. And the scariest part? They feel better because of it. You've literally absorbed their pain like an emotional filtration system. And your mind, desperate for meaning, calls it being a good person. But you are not an emotional landfill. You are not built to hold every storm that others create. When you carry other people's chaos long enough, something inside you shifts. You stop reacting to your own emotions because they no longer feel like yours. You lose the instinct to protect yourself. You begin confusing depletion for purpose, exhaustion for love. That's the quiet death of selfhood. And it doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens every time you say, "It's okay," when it isn't. Every time you comfort someone who just hurt you. Every time you put their peace before your truth. In the language of dark psychology, this is called emotional conditioning. They teach you, through repetition, that your feelings are negotiable and theirs are sacred. You learn to anticipate their moods like weather patterns. You apologize for things you didn't do. You start reading silence like scripture. You become addicted to stability, any stability, even if it means surrendering control. And that's the cruel genius of manipulation through empathy. It doesn't force obedience, it trains it. You end up managing their emotions better than they do. You edit your words before they're spoken, preempting potential outbursts. You filter your reactions to keep the peace. That's not love. That's emotional governance. You've become a caretaker of their instability. And every caretaker eventually becomes the prisoner of their own kindness. Let's go even darker. Some people drain you not out of need but out of design. They've learned that chaos commands attention. The more unpredictable they become, the more you revolve around them. Every fight becomes a test. Will you leave this time? And when you don't, they grow bolder. They use pain as proof of your devotion. They measure love by endurance, not respect. They might even weaponize guilt, the most efficient form of emotional control. They make you feel responsible for their happiness. They praise you when you comply. They withdraw when you resist. That push and pull creates cognitive dissonance, the psychological discomfort that binds you tighter. Because now, you don't just want them to stop hurting you. You want to prove you're good enough to make them happy again. And that's the final stage of extraction. You start fighting for the very system that's draining you. Here's the paradox. They're not just taking your energy, they're reprogramming your identity. Every drained day convinces you that fatigue is love, sacrifice is virtue, and silence is peace. But peace built on suppression isn't peace. It's paralysis. And once you internalize that paralysis, you stop noticing the theft. You stop noticing yourself. You think you've matured because you don't react anymore. But that calm you feel, it isn't enlightenment. It's emotional anemia, the absence of reaction, not the mastery of it. You've been conditioned to mistake numbness for strength. There's a moment, though a fragile one, when you sense the truth. It happens in the quiet. When their voice fades, when the messages stop, when the room goes still, you feel something returning. A flicker of energy you haven't felt in years. Clarity. Space. Your own voice, whispering beneath the noise. That's the sign that the drain is reversible, but only through distance. And distance, in this world, is the purest act of rebellion. The reversal, when the mirror turns. There comes a moment when the drain stops being invisible. Not because they changed, but because you finally looked. You notice the patterns, the subtle cues, how their tone softens when they need something, how their silence punishes when you resist, how every apology is wrapped in a new demand. And for the first time, you see it not as love, but as leverage. That's the day your empathy fractures. Half of it still cares, the other half starts calculating. You begin to realize that compassion without discernment is a form of self-harm. Because every time you save someone from the consequences of their behavior, you're training them to destroy you more efficiently. They don't need to lie anymore. You do it for them every time you say, "It's fine." Here's the uncomfortable truth. You participated in your own exhaustion, not because you were weak, but because you were conditioned to believe that goodness requires sacrifice. You equated suffering with virtue, endurance with depth, and exhaustion with meaning. That's how society disguises control, by turning martyrdom into morality. They tell you that selflessness is noble, but nobility without self-preservation becomes a slow suicide. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your energy just because they're hurting. And yet, most of your life, you've been praised for giving beyond your capacity. That's not generosity. That's indoctrination. When you finally see it, guilt arrives first. You feel selfish for saying no. You feel cruel for stepping back. You question whether protecting yourself means you've become like them. But guilt is the gatekeeper of control. It keeps you loyal to your own depletion. It whispers that boundaries are betrayal. And as long as guilt governs you, you remain accessible to everyone but yourself. Here's what they never told you about emotional boundaries. They don't just protect your time, they recalibrate your identity. Each no you speak rewires the brain to prioritize self-respect over approval. Neural pathways once addicted to guilt start responding to logic. And slowly, your nervous system begins to heal from dependency. The moment you say, "I can't talk about this right now," you disrupt years of conditioning. Because for the first time, you're not reacting, you're choosing. And choice is the opposite of control. They will not like this version of you, because they can no longer drink from you freely. You'll see it in their eyes: confusion, maybe anger. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're distant, cold, unrecognizable. They'll call it arrogance. But what they're really seeing is self-possession, something they can't manipulate anymore. They'll try to re-enter your life the same way they always did, through guilt, nostalgia, or pity. They'll remind you of the times you were there for them, as if kindness is a contract you can't revoke. But this time, you'll see the bait for what it is: a recycled illusion of intimacy. Here's the Machiavellian paradox. Mercy is powerful only when it's optional. When you give it freely, it loses all strategic value. When you control it, it becomes currency. That doesn't mean cruelty, it means calculation. You no longer give access because someone asks. You give it because it aligns with your equilibrium. That is emotional sovereignty, when your empathy becomes selective, not reactive. And yet, detachment isn't numbness. True detachment is clarity, the ability to care without collapsing. It's standing in someone's storm without letting it soak into your skin. It's love without leakage. You can still feel deeply, but you no longer confuse depth with drowning. You can still help others, but not at the expense of your own stability. Because the drained version of you was generous, but powerless. This version, the aware one, is dangerous. The reversal continues when you realize how your absence reshapes the power dynamic. When you stop responding instantly, their confidence wavers. When you stop explaining, they lose their leverage. When you stop playing the rescuer, they're forced to meet their own reflection. And that's when the extraction ends, not through confrontation, but through silence. Silence, in dark psychology, isn't passive. It's the withdrawal of energy that once sustained the illusion. It's the collapse of the ecosystem they built around your compliance. You start to see the beauty in emotional distance, not as isolation, but as insulation. You feel your vitality return not as joy, but as neutrality. Calm becomes your rebellion. Because when you stop over-explaining, when you stop justifying, when you stop fixing, you stop feeding the very loop that drained you. And that's when they feel the absence. Not your words, not your anger, your withdrawn attention. That's the moment they realize you were the source all along. The awakening. Rebuilding the fortress. When you stop giving, you don't lose connection, you regain perspective. The silence that once terrified you now feels sacred. Because for the first time, you're no longer an emotional resource. You are your own center. And it feels foreign at first, almost lonely. But that loneliness is not emptiness. It's recovery. You're detoxing from the addiction of overgiving, from the rush of being needed, from the illusion that peace must be earned through exhaustion. Here's what happens inside your mind when you begin reclaiming energy. The body no longer vibrates under chronic alert. The brain reroutes its focus from others back to self. The amygdala, your fear center, calms because you're not bracing for emotional invasion. Your dopamine levels rise again, not from praise, but from autonomy. You start finding beauty in ordinary stillness, in mornings that don't begin with someone's crisis, in nights where no apology is drafted in your head. You begin remembering who you were before the drain. But here's the truth. Recovery from emotional depletion is not peaceful at first. It's violent in its clarity. Because to rebuild, you must dismantle the identity that tolerated the drain. You start auditing your relationships like a strategist, not a savior. You ask, does this connection feed me or bleed me? Am I being understood or just used? Would this person still call me if I stopped rescuing them? These questions burn because the answers expose the scaffolding of illusion. But pain is purification. It extracts what's false. Soon, you realize power doesn't mean dominance, it means discernment. You stop measuring goodness by how much you endure. You start measuring it by how much energy you preserve. You no longer run toward every cry for help, because not every cry is genuine. Some are sirens meant to lure you back into servitude. You learn to read emotion like a code, to separate the authentic from the manipulative. And this time, you choose response over reflex. That's when control returns quietly, surgically, completely. Here's what most people never learn. Detachment isn't indifference. It's intelligence with boundaries. You can love someone and still deny them access. You can empathize with someone and still say, that's not mine to carry. You can care deeply and still protect your equilibrium. That's not coldness, that's self-governance. Because emotion without governance becomes chaos. And chaos always finds a host. You used to be that host. Now, you are the architect. Your new power doesn't roar, it observes. It studies patterns, predicts reactions, and refuses engagement. You start seeing emotional games before they begin. You sense manipulation not as threat, but as information. Someone tries to provoke guilt. You see the hook. Someone plays victim to control you. You spot the script. You stop responding to emotional triggers because you've rewritten the code. It's strange how silence becomes your sharpest weapon. Not silence as retreat, silence as mirror. When you don't explain, they're forced to face their own projection. When you don't defend, their accusations collapse without oxygen. When you don't react, they can no longer extract. That's the secret. Every manipulator fears your stillness is their starvation. Because emotional drain requires participation. Without your engagement, their machinery rusts. You might notice, as you evolve, that people drop away. Not because you became cruel, but because you stopped being convenient. Those who fed on your compliance will label you heartless. Those who loved your availability will call you distant. Let them. Their discomfort is proof of your evolution. Because power always disturbs those who benefited from your weakness. And then comes the subtle shift, the one that changes everything. You stop seeking peace through others and begin cultivating it internally. You realize the mind can generate energy as surely as it can lose it. Through solitude, through mastery, through direction, you start investing your emotional energy like currency only where it multiplies. You guard it with ritual precision, a moment of reflection before responding, a pause before promising, a question before committing. This is not coldness. This is strategy. The art of emotional sovereignty, power disguised as composure. When you reach this stage, the drain can never find you again. Because you no longer broadcast availability, you emanate boundaries. You move through the world like still water, calm on the surface, impenetrable beneath. You no longer chase connection. You select it. You no longer fear solitude. You weaponize it. That's when emotional power transforms into psychological elegance. The quiet, magnetic authority of someone who cannot be drained because they finally understand where their energy belongs. The closure, the dark art of keeping your light. There's a kind of peace that doesn't look gentle. It looks guarded. You no longer glow recklessly in every direction. You shine with intention, like a flame behind glass. Because you've learned the most difficult law of dark psychology. Not everyone deserves access to your emotional temperature. When you look back now, you see the pattern like a map. Every person who drained you taught you where your boundaries were missing. Every exhaustion was a signal. Every betrayal was a teacher in disguise. The pain that once felt meaningless was, in truth, design, forcing you to evolve from empathy into strategy, from kindness into discernment. You didn't just survive the drain. You decoded it. Here's the lesson that echoes through every power philosophy, from Machiavelli to modern psychology. Control isn't about domination. It's about containment. The world will always try to siphon your attention, your outrage, your care. But only those who can contain their emotion, direct it like a weapon, instead of bleeding it, ever rise above the noise. Because power is not energy spent. It's energy preserved. The people who once drained you will not understand this version of you. They'll call you detached, distant, even arrogant. But detachment is not the absence of care. It's the mastery of focus. You've learned to protect the most valuable resource on earth. Not money, not time, but emotional equilibrium. Because whoever controls your emotion controls your behavior. And whoever controls your behavior owns your life. That's the hidden contract you've finally torn apart. You begin moving differently now. When someone tries to guilt you, you feel the old instinct rise, then you exhale it. You no longer rush to fill silence, no longer flinch at disapproval. You've become fluent in emotional minimalism. You conserve words the way strategists conserve soldiers. Every statement serves a purpose. Every silence delivers a message. And the people around you can feel it. The quiet gravity of someone who cannot be pulled into emotional chaos anymore. You realize something profound. You don't have to prove you're kind. You don't have to justify your peace. You don't have to bleed to be seen. Love no longer feels like labor. Empathy no longer feels like servitude. You finally understand that compassion without control is just a leak in disguise. Now, when you give by choice, not compulsion. And that's the difference between being generous and being drained. The world will still test you. Energy drainers will always exist in relationships, in workplaces, in families. But this time, they will find nothing to extract. Because your energy no longer leaks through guilt. It circulates within self-awareness. You've built an internal fortress, not of walls, but of filters. Every emotion passes through discernment before it touches your core. Every impulse meets the question, does this serve my stability? That's not selfishness. That's sovereignty. Here's the quiet irony. The more you protect your energy, the more powerful your presence becomes. People start noticing your silence before your words. They sense control, calm, and mystery, the three attributes every manipulator fears and every leader commands. You don't chase respect anymore. It begins to orbit around you naturally. Because respect isn't earned through effort, it's emitted through restraint. And so you arrive here, the other side of exhaustion, where peace isn't something you search for, it's something you emit. Where love isn't a performance, it's a privilege. Where empathy isn't a leash, it's a choice. You've learned what few ever do. Energy is the foundation of power. Attention is its currency. And control, true control, begins with deciding who can access both. So the next time someone tries to pull you back into their storm, remember, you are no longer the harbor. You are the sea itself, vast, calm, and untouchable. Because emotional drain ends not when they stop taking, but when you stop leaking. And that's the cruel beauty of power. It doesn't shout. It watches. It remembers. And it never forgets who once mistook your kindness for consent. Machiavellian lesson. Power isn't in what you give, it's in what you choose to keep.